Now, our top story today, Rishi Sunak faces a fresh backbench headache over his flagship Rwanda Bill, with around 40 Conservative MPs planning various amendments, which they say will strengthen the UK's immigration laws.
This comes after the Labour Party tabled a vote in Parliament attempting to force the government to say just how much it would cost to send each asylum seeker to Rwanda.
Well, joining us to discuss this more is TalkTV's chief political commentator, Peter Cardwell. Welcome back. Hi. And the journalist and author, Michela Wrong. Thank you both. Michela's written extensively about Rwanda. Michela, is there a risk, and we've talked about this before, that Rwanda, in fact, rather than Rishi Sunak's own MPs, lose patience with the fact that we keep scrutinising and say to them, it's dangerous to send people there, we don't think the policy is tough enough? Is there a point at which Rwanda could say, we've had enough?
Well, to be honest, no, because just look at how much money they've got out of the British government. At a time when aid budgets were falling, we know they've already had £240 million without having to process a single asylum seeker. And that's a lot of money. I mean, it's a small country, it's very aid dependent, and is very grateful for that. And we know there's another 50 million on the way.
So they're cashing in without much responsibility right now.
Why would they pull it?
Michela, help me out. I'm obviously as confused as the rest of the United Kingdom. If you take Sunak out of the equation for the moment, and the hill that he's chosen to die on, in my opinion, we're spending at the moment £250 million. So far, nobody's taken off in any airline because no commercial airline wants a part of it. The only people that have visited Rwanda are 3 Home Secretaries. We've got arguments about whether it's safe or it's not. We've got a government that's split between we should be more hardline and we shouldn't be hardline. Why on earth, in the name of God, doesn't somebody in government go, instead of this pie-in-the-sky idea, we should consider one thing and one thing only, which is 170,000 backlog, and create a processing system that deals with this problem ourselves? I don't understand, Michela. I don't understand at all.
Well, I think a lot of people would agree with you, and certainly all the the lawyers who represent people who are going to be sent to,
Well, they're making a pretty fortune as well, though, aren't they, with respect?
Yes. But this has always been a nonsensical policy, right from the start when it was first suggested. You've got a country that is one of the poorest countries in Africa. It's one of the most highly densely populated. It really doesn't need any new refugees. It's got a really dodgy human rights record.
Has it?
Yes, really dodgy at home.
So why would the government follow this, knowing that's the case?
I think there's a really good question to be asked, and I hope that we're going to have a select committee hearing, I think later today, in which they're going to be discussing the roots of this whole asylum deal. One of the questions is, why was Rwanda ever considered? Because what we know is the ambassador who was there in situ at the time when this was first suggested, she said, Rwanda should not be on your list because it's an inappropriate place to send people.
What I don't get is even Starmer, Pete, is talking about processing in a different country. Nobody can look me in the face and go, Jez, you're getting old, you don't understand this. Why can the United Kingdom not create a damn processing system that deals with this 170,000 backlog in our own country and process them? And if they're legal, fine. And if they're not, goodbye. Why can't we do that?
Well, that is the main issue here. The backlog is the huge elephant in the room here, whereas Rwanda, many people will see as a bit of a distraction. The point of the Rwanda plan, Rishi Sunak would argue, is that it's a deterrent. There's no evidence to say, really, that anybody has been deterred so far. There have been other countries that do these schemes, that do third country processing, and there has been a big deal that the UK has done with Albania and has stopped quite a lot of Albanian immigrants, those crime gangs.
Then spend your time, Rishi Sunak, doing more deals with countries like Albania so we can get this mess sorted.
And that's what a lot of people are arguing it can happen. Wow. But also, of course, we have done deals with some countries to try to get them not to send their migrants to us, like France, but that hasn't worked very well so far.
You're nodding about the Albania strategy. Do you think, Michela, you understand this country better than we do, Rwanda, that the government should be looking at alternative options that could be return agreements or having offshore processing centres that just isn't quite this one? Yeah,
I think this one has always been presented as a silver bullet, this magic solution, and it's always been the opposite. And really, the government missed a massive trick. When Suella Braverman was sacked and Cleverly came in, we know Cleverly was not a supporter of this scheme. And we know now that, Sunak had massive doubts about it as well. So, that was a moment in which to say This was, you know, Priti Patel's deal. This was Suella Braverman's deal. Let's
They didn't take that opportunity.
But Michaela, that's
Politically,
never going to happen because, and I said it earlier, and you cut me off. I'm not being disrespectful when I say that. Patently, to me, that says that Sunak was more interested in being Prime Minister of this country for 2 years by getting Braverman on side and bowing to her demands or hoping that down the line he could change it. This is on him. He had an absolute chance to go Rwanda was Priti Patel's, Boris Johnson's, it's pie in the sky.
It was too far down the track at that stage, Jeremy.
Come on, mate, he employed Gavin Williamson first day. He hasn't been the new man that's going to change things that he said he was going to do.
Politically, it would be incredibly difficult for Rishi Sunak to extract himself from this. I'm sure he would like to not have this as a problem. Maybe he really believes in it. Maybe he gets up in the morning and says, you know what, I really want people to go to Rwanda. I don't think he does. I think he's hamstrung by this policy.
I think we should send Paula Venables to Rwanda, but that's another story altogether.
Can I ask, Michaela, if, and we know there are many legal challenges, there are many votes, Rishi Sunak's got to contend with his own party to get them all on side. If they manage to greenlight this policy, can you see it being a successful strategy?
I think we're going to run right up to the election with it because we've got the second reading coming. Then eventually, if it gets to the second reading of the bill is going to be incredibly contentious. You're going to see the right wing of the party and the more central branch of the party really hammering it out. And then eventually...
But let's say they do all of that. Let's say all the Conservative MPs thought this was a brilliant plan. Do you think it's actually a successful strategy?
If one takes off, is that...
To me, that doesn't solve anything. I mean, you know, is that really going to be a deterrent? Are people going to look at this deal that was launched in June 2022 and sometime in 2024 might see one plane take off and they're going to think, oh, you know, that solved Britain's immigration issues?
I agree with you, Michela, and I think the people traffickers are just going to say, look, there's a vanishingly small chance that you'll be sent to Rwanda, even if flights take off, even if 500 people are sent to Rwanda.
I don't see it as a deterrent. I would be laughing if I was trying to get into this country. Again, they're absolutely not sure what they're doing. I'm going anyway. Can I ask you something that I asked in the last hour, both of you actually? Jenrick seems to be front and centre to this. I thought Braverman would have been.
Well, Jenrick, it's really interesting because he was sort of sent into the Home Office to sort of be the spy. He was always seen as a kind of one nation lefty conservative. Well, that's not the case. He is a true believer in this policy. He is someone who resigned on a matter of principle as a result of this and has become a real figurehead for those who want this policy to be strengthened and possibly for the European Court of Human Rights to be ignored when this policy goes through. So we'll see what happens with some of those amendments, attempted amendments next week. I don't think it will necessarily go through in that way or be strengthened in that way. But very, very interesting. He is a bit of a figurehead, more so than Suella Braverman. She has faded slightly, and this is a very, very interesting thing, certainly in regard to, you know, she was talked about when I was at Conservative Party conference a few months ago. She was the toast of the conference, really, really popular leader. I don't think she has that same support now. Robert Jenrick will, of course, be thinking, hold on a second, if Rishi Sunak loses the election, it's going to be a leadership election. I don't think he'd become leader of the Conservative Party, but I think he will run.
Interesting. Can I just, in terms of this whole philosophy, we quite rightly, Michaela, sit here and criticise Rwanda and Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman. What are Labour going to do? I mean, I said it just now. The Labour Party, it's easy from the cheap seats. They were saying the other day they're going to do this processing abroad. Did they have a plan? Does anybody have a plan?
Well, yeah, I must admit that the hairs at the back of my neck went up when I heard them talking about offshore processing. Because it sounds like they want to sort of show the electorate that they can also do a Rwanda policy, but maybe, I don't know, maybe not in Rwanda. But I mean, I think what Yvette Cooper has been talking about, much more sensible, is improve your relationship with France. That's the key bit. You know,
or stop giving them 500 million quid for nothing.
and you know, the Albania deal is one to sort of expand and look at, and you know, enforce your borders and deal with the backlog.
So why do you think the Albania plan is successful? And if so, why not there be a strategy that says, OK, we learn from that, let's come up with other agreements with other countries?
Completely agree.
I think the Rwanda deal was presented as a kind of sexy silver bullet solution. You know, here's the thing, it's going to terrify the bejesus out of the asylum seekers.
But what Rosie means in terms of a deterrent, I was sat here 2 years ago, and the biggest, you know this, the highest percentage of foreign male criminal prisoners were Albanians. There were 8,000 of them. Now, somebody went and made a deal with Albania, and that has rectified itself. So the question is it because they hate us, Europe, because of Brexit? I've no idea. But why are we not, in government, proactively going to these countries and making deals and getting these people sent back, rather than chasing a pie-in-the-sky idea that doesn't really get bought into by anybody,
Yeah.
it seems to me.
Yeah, it's always been a fantasy project. And the trouble with the Albania deal is it raises the issue of, you know, all sorts of Brexit issues, because it's all about cooperation with the EU. And people would say, well, if you want good cooperation, you know, you should have worked on that a little bit more.
Despite all of the problems that we've come up with, Peter, Rishi Sunak is pushing ahead. Just talk us through the timeline, because today we're learning that some of these Conservative MPs say it is not strong enough, so therefore we want amendments. Second reading next week. There's still a lot of hurdles for the Prime Minister to get through before we even talk about sort of the legality of all of this.
Yeah, it's actually the third reading next week, but we've got Monday and Tuesday are going to be absolutely fascinating. Different amendments to see which parts of, well, to me...
you need to get
so
out
much,
more.
So much so that I'm cancelling a day off on Tuesday.
Are you?
So yes.
Wow, that's a shock.
Very exciting. So there's going to be a very, very interesting time when these amendments are going to be put forward. We're going to see the right of the Conservative Party trying to strengthen this. Robert Jenrick's going to be a central figure in all of that. We'll see if any of that goes through. And if it doesn't go through, do those 30 or 40 MPs vote against the final
And he's only got a majority
motion?
of 56 now, down from 80.
Well, 54 now as well, because in fact, no, hold on, 52, because he's got two by-elections coming.
by-elections
Mr. Bone is now being...
that's right.
Yeah, anyway, don't get me on that.